I don't understand how to like put it together. Like when I'm looking at like hypocalcemia and all those things, like how that's affected.
Okay. Yeah. So, real quick, what I'm gonna do. So on this guy, I'm gonna talk about what's happening at each point. Okay? Because they went over that with you, didn't they? Okay. So I'm gonna see how much you can remember. So we're gonna say the very, very first event was a ligand-gated channel opening up. So sodium flowed into the cell, causing a little bit of depolarization. Okay? So at threshold, what happens?
It stays the same. Exactly.
So I guess going up, like from here up to there. Do you know what's opening?
Oh, what's opening?
Yeah. Why is it depolarizing faster and faster?
You have sodium.
It's because of sodium, but it's because of the voltage, the sodium voltage-gated channels. Voltage-gated sodium channels. Okay. What happens? So the voltage-gated sodium channel opens up. Okay. The different sodium channels can open up at different charges. So the higher it goes, the more open up. So that's why it's exponential and getting faster and faster and faster.
So when the sodium voltage channels open, that's what causes a little bit of an increase.
Yeah, so it causes it to go up, and that opens up some more of them because the charge is more changed or more depolarized, so which opens some more, which opens some more. The point at which I guess the dominoes are going to be pushed over, meaning where the full action potential is going to occur, is going to be at threshold. Okay. So that's the point at which enough sodium gates are open that it's going to cause eventually all of them to open up in that area. So they'll all open up, causing an action potential. Okay. So the next point, so that was in this area. The next point is going to be up here. Do you know what happens? Okay. So the voltage, so here's my sodium channel, voltage gate. For the very first part, here's my potassium one. It starts to open, but very, very, very slowly. Okay? That's in this area. Did I say calcium?
Yeah.
Potassium. I meant potassium. Okay? Is this picture making a little bit of sense? If it's not, please let me know, because I don't want to just be teaching myself.
That part of it.
Okay. So right here on this chart, the sodium gated, the voltage gated sodium channels opened up. The potassium ones are getting the same repulsion. The negative charges are coming out here, causing these to open, but they are kind of like a rusted hinge. They open very slowly. Okay? So these guys are starting to open, but they're not really open yet. Okay? And so the sodium keeps opening more. All of the sodiums are going to fly open until up here. And what happens at this point is the sodium inactivation gate, because this is the activation gate, inactivation gate. The sodium inactivation gate closes. Okay? And the potassium voltage gated channels finally are all the way open up at this point. Okay?
So it just takes it forever to open potassium.
Yeah, it just takes it longer to open.
Faster than, sodium is faster, right?
Yeah. So that's why that stops right there, stops shooting up, because the sodium closed, so positive charges aren't flowing inside of it anymore. And then the potassium opens. So where's the potassium going to flow? It's going to flow outside the cell. because the potassium's high concentration here. So if we open the potassium gates, it's going to flow out.
Oh, okay, so it's high concentration.
So we're losing positive ions inside the cell. So it's going to become more negative, right?
So why wouldn't, like, I don't know, I just always think like it needs to balance each other out. So that's kind of why I was thinking it was positive. But it always just goes the opposite way when it's concentrated.
So things always flow down their concentration gradient. So you're saying, why doesn't the charge make it come back in? It's kind of, so with the concentration gradient, it wants to flow out, but it's, what's a good way to explain this? The concentration gradient is in general stronger than the electrical gradient. But in a localized area, it'll balance out. But if we place, if we theoretically could put in more gates, more leak channels, the concentration gradient would push more out. Okay?
So it's the concentration gradient is stronger than electrical?
In a general sense. So if we had more leak channels, then more potassium would leave than with the number that we have right now. So when these guys open up, at this point, the concentration gradient is the only guy playing in. The electrical gradient's not really playing a part in it right then. So it's flowing out, hardcore. Okay. Plus, and my mind just clicked something as well. Plus, the positive charges we now have a lot of positive charges in here because the sodium flowed in.
Mm-hmm.
So, because temporarily at this point, the cell's not negative. The cell is positive.
Yeah.
So there's no electrical force to be sucking the potassium back in.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then once it does get down here, the concentration gradient continues it to go down and hyperpolarizes the cell. So repolarizes, then hyperpolarizes. Okay? Is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then come back down to threshold. That's the point at which this guy resets. So his activation closes and his inactivation gate opens. But potassium is still open because we still keep going down. And then at this point, down there,
Close.
is when the potassium closes. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we slowly come back up here because of our sodium-potassium pump and these gates, these leak channels.
So the sodium potassium pump helps regulate it, right?
Yeah, it helps keep the concentration gradient because we just let a ton of sodium in. So how do we get it out? By pumping it back out. So it pumps it back out as well as the potassium leak channels. It lets the higher concentration of potassium that's out here come back in, or if it equals it out, because this guy is going to be a huge factor in why we have the resting membrane potential that we do have.
Mm-hmm.
This guy and the fact that there's negatively charged proteins for the most part, that's why it's negatively charged as a cell, or the proteins, and this guy is helping it balance out at about that.
Okay.
Okay?
I think that was the hardest part for me, like understanding kind of like how the channels work and like what they do.
Yeah. It's a lot to take in. Okay. How do you feel on those? Do you want to explain it back to me?
Can we like the last bit? Yeah.
Okay.
Two.
I'm a jerk, so I'm erasing it all. I'm going to have you explain it to me. If you want, you can come up and show it on this. They'll just have to get rid of the footage because they won't show any students or anything like that, so they'll just delete it out. But if you teach it, you're going to remember it better than if I just regurgitate it to you again.
But I don't remember exactly, like I can write it down, like what you were saying about it. Okay, I wanted to.
I'm still going to be a jerk. Talk me through it, because so if you think about what's happening with charges, you can usually figure out what's happening. I'm just going to tell you the very, very first event is going to be, so something that starts the very start of the depolarization is probably a ligand-gated sodium channel, probably. Okay? So the ligand-gated sodium channel opens up.
Okay.
So sodium flows in. What's going to happen to the charge?
It's going to become a little bit more positive on enzyme itself.
Okay, so what does that do?
And that's going to make the, how do you call that? Does it have a specific name?
What?
That graph, or?
So this graph, because usually it's just,
I just know it's going to go up, but does it?
yeah. So how does it change? It's usually you just say it depolarizes the cell. Yeah, because usually it's just sitting at here until something happens. So we're saying the ligand-gated sodium channels cause a little bit of depolarization. Okay. Then what happens?
So when the depolarization happens, then there are leak channels, I think there's sodium.
Not leak channels.
There's a voltage gate.
Voltage-gated sodium channels and voltage-gated potassium channels. What happened to those?
So the sodium one's open.
Okay. So the sodium, this is their activation gate, fly open.
And then
What happens to potassium? Does it stay closed or what?
And it's going to start to open.
So it starts to open. Very, very, very slowly.
That one takes longer, yeah.
Okay.
And then because of that, it's still going up because potassium is not flowing in as fast as sodium.
And so threshold is the point at which all of these guys, it's the point of no return, the dominoes are pressed and all of them are going to fly open. Because there's a lot of these guys. They open up at different charges.
So that's when all the sodium leak channels open?
So the voltage, I know I'm being nitpicky, I'm just being nitpicky to make sure that you understand.
Voltage?
Yeah, because these ones open because of the charge. The leak are always open because they are very leaky.
Okay, so this specifically the voltage.
Yeah. So all the sodium voltage guys are open, causes it. And what happens at the top, or the crest?
And that's when potassium is open.
So potassium opens. Okay. Anything else?
And sodium then closes.
Which gate? The top one or the bottom one?
Bottom one.
So the inactivation gate closes. Activation, inactivation.
Is there only like one?
What do you mean?
I know there's multiple gates. Is it like, are they all opening at the same time, or just the one that started?
So like we'll say theoretically, one sodium voltage gate is opened. So it depolarizes, causes 2, then 3, 4, 5, 6, and this a better example would be 600, 700, 800, and then it causes it so all of them are open. So all of them open.
Do they all
We get
close
up
at
here.
the same time?
Approximately-ish.
Okay. Well then,
Yeah, we just, how we specify is we say they all close at this point. So they all slam close.
so the inactivation gate.
Cool. What happens? Oh, you already said potassium, didn't you? So, and potassium went wide open. So potassium's flowing in or out of the cell.
Potassium is flowing in.
Where's potassium high?
Oh, it's on the inside, so it's going out.
So it's flowing out. Perfect. Okay.
Look at it, because I always think of the positive, like,
So what's going to happen to this guy?
it's going to go down.
It's going to go
It's
down.
going to hyperpolarize.
Yeah. So usually when we're talking about getting it back to where it started, usually we just say it repolarizes, but sometimes you'll hear people say hyperpolarizes. But the more accurate thing is it's repolarizing back to where it was. So about this point, where threshold was, is when this is going to reset. Just so you know. Like, I don't know if they talk about that in class, but it's good to know. Then it hyperpolarizes. And what happens down here?
The potassium is going to close it.
Bam. And then why does it go back up?
There's sodium coming in again.
So the sodium potassium pump, and as well as a little bit of this guy, the potassium leak channels.
So it becomes regulated by the sodium.
Awesome. You walked me through action potentials.